And now it started. Okay, great. And give me a thumbs up. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So like I said, I'm in Aspen, Colorado in a coffee shop. So hopefully the music won't get too loud, and I'm trying not to shout to, the patrons. What I want to start with today is a blog post by Pierre Blanchette. And Pierre is a Frenchman who writes about different books and issues that are important to him. And today he did what I'm going to share with you is a blog post that he wrote called How to Make Better Decisions in Split Seconds. And this is taken from what he decided to write about is from the book that Malcolm Gladwell wrote called Blink. And we start with a quote from Malcolm Gladwell. The quote is, "Decisions made very quickly can be every bit as good as decisions made cautiously and deliberately." Pierre goes on to write, "There is no better summary to this book, Blink, than its subtitle, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking." Blink by Malcolm Gladwell is about the decisions that we make in a split second. These are very interesting because they don't rely on decision making. They rely on our intuition and our subconscious. And as Malcolm explains, he explains it throughout his book, it's very important to understand how our brains work in that case. The more we understand it, the better our decisions will be. Most of us would be a bit careful about taking our instinct and fast decision making as a good answer to the problem. But most of the time, it is. We cannot explain why it's the right decision because the calculations are made in the background of our brain. But it is the right decision. Another quote from Gladwell is, "What would happen if we took our instincts seriously?" Pierre Blanchette continues to write, "Turns out a lot of good things, but we still need to be careful. Most of us have biases that we're not aware of. And in that case, it can make us make terrible decisions and even discriminate against minorities. Let's see the main points this book offers to understand and improve our decisions and our decision-making process." The first area is more information isn't always good. Blanchette writes, "Intuitively, we would think that the more information we have, the better our decisions can be. But it turns out to be wrong in many cases." Malcolm Gladwell writes and gives a lot of examples, but one is amazing. In the early 2000s, the US military organized a war game. The idea was to simulate an attack on a country where a rogue anti-American dictator was ruling.
Mary Beth, can I interrupt for 1 minute?
Yes.
Can you move to your left again? Because that glare from the window, we can't even see your face.
Oh, there.
There you go. That's better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So they set up this war game and they had two teams. They had the blue team, which are the good guys, and the red team, which are the bad guys. The blue team would be composed of a lot of representatives from the Army and look like a conventional US war room. They wanted to improve their warfighting abilities and create the techniques and maneuvers of the 21st century. They needed someone to play the dictator of the red team. They chose someone named Paul Van Ripper. You might not know him, but he is a highly decorated military officer that served during the Vietnam War. He is known for his fast decision-making and taking the right choice with very little information. The fake war between the blue and the red teams was therefore not only a war between a conventional army and a rogue one, but it was a war between the process of calculating everything and the fast decision-making of a flexible army. The blue team had countless amounts of information. They had satellites monitoring the terrain and a hierarchical organization to take the decisions and put them into action. Everything was discussed and weighted before taking action. On the other side, Van Ripper had a spread out army and decision-making process. He trusted the people on the field to make the right local decisions and was managing the global strategy. He lacked information and his communication was blocked by the blue team. The question is, who won? It turned out that in the very first days of the simulated war, the red team crushed the blue team's hopes. Their communication was blocked. Fine, let's send messages by motorbikes. Their GPS was also blocked. Okay, let's use a World War II system working with lights to manage airplanes. The thing that happened is that every decision made by the blue team was made with too much information on their hands. They didn't know what mattered most because they had too much information. On the other side, the red team only focused on what mattered. Everything else was secondary. Their victory was so triumphant that the game organizers had to give them huge penalties so that the blue team would win. And the military wouldn't look like idiots whose overcomplicated system didn't work. This example shows the importance of focusing on the right information and eliminating everything else. The more information we have, the more complex our choices become. The second point that Blanchett makes is there is no certainty about what will work. Following the last idea, even with the best preparation and the best analysis, we never really know what will work. We have to live with this uncertainty concerning people's fast decision-making. Malcolm Gladwell, again, gives a lot of examples, but the best one to illustrate this is the Aeron chair. You might not know it as the bestseller from Herman Miller in the office chair department. But when designing the chair, they had no idea it would work. They spent a huge amount of money building it and then tested it on people's reactions to see if they would like it. It turned out that instinctively, most people hated it. They found it ugly and too different from what they were used to when they were speaking to what an office chair would be like. But Herman Miller's experts, they liked it and believed it would work. They understood that all the numbers gathered during the focus group on the chair were irrelevant. There was more to it than numbers. There was a feeling about what a good product is, and only experts in the field could figure it out. What an expert could capture in a blink of an eye couldn't be captured by the average person like you and me. It turned out that this chair eventually would become a bestseller. It was so different that at first sight, people didn't know that they would like it. They eventually did, though. And that's something mind-blowing to me, Blanchett writes. An expert can feel more about something related to his expertise than us. His or her intuition and experience can make the process of evaluating something nearly instantaneous. And we are all experts in specific fields. This means that we can trust our gut in these fields. We must trust our gut. The third area that Blanchett covers is we can control rapid cognition. Blanchett goes on to write, the issue with rapid cognition is that it can be biased with conscious and unconscious biases. It's something very hard to fight, and we must try. And here is a good example of how shaping our environment can do it. The Munich Philharmonic was recruiting a new musician to play the main trombone. Because one of the participants was the child of a well-known person, they decided to put a screen between them and the musician to not be biased by who the person was. They invited about 30 people. The number 17 impressed them so much, they told everyone else to go home and selected this number. When they saw who the person was, they were in shock. It was a woman. Never before had a woman occupied this crucial place in the Philharmonic, and everyone started to gasp. According to them, the trombone is supposed to be a man's instrument. They tried everything to get rid of her. Her name is Abby Conant, by the way, but whatever they did, Abby was just too good. The same pattern applied in the US. Before screening the participants for an audition, Blanchett writes, less than 5% of musicians were women. Right now, nearly 50% of musicians are women. What is incredible about this is that none of the people judging the musicians thought they were discriminating against women. They just had unconscious biases toward them. And instead of fighting these biases with training and awareness seminars, they just changed the context of the decision. And they used the decision-making process to eliminate the biases. Blanchett concludes by saying, changing our unconscious biases is very hard, even when we have the best intentions. Let's rather change the environment in which we are making these decisions, and this is far more effective. Many times when we look at this scripture today that Diane read for us from the Gospel of Luke, we focus on verse 26, which is, whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother and wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even life itself, cannot be my disciple. When we hear this particular verse, we freak out. We think, wait, I don't even care what's coming next. Like, I'm so caught up in that particular verse. We think, there's no way I'm going to hate my mother and hate my father, my wife, my partner, my husband. I'm not going to hate my children. I'm not going to hate my whole family and the life I've created. No way. I am not doing that. There's no way, no how. This Jesus, he is crazy if he thinks I'm going to do that. Quite often, we also instantly think, I can't do that. So I'm sure Jesus is not calling me to serve the kingdom of God, because Jesus has said right here, it's all or nothing. And if I can't hate the people closest to me and give up the life I have, I'm not good enough for the task. I'm not good enough for what Jesus is calling me to do. I'm not up to par. In the Gospels, Jesus quite often wanted to shock people into a new view. Jesus was radical. Jesus was not your run-of-the-mill guy. He was willing to welcome the leper. He was willing to welcome and embrace the prostitute. And among others, he was willing to welcome the tax collector to get people's attention. He wasn't the meek and mild guy that we would like to create him to be in the 20th and 21st centuries, that he would be pulled into more of our modern world and all the amenities we have. No, Jesus was radical, and Jesus pushed the boundaries. And what he would do to get people's attention is quite often he would use sarcasm and he would use hyperbole to get our attention. A hyperbole is an exaggerated statement or claim, and it's not meant to be taken literally. And that's what we can see in that verse 26. He's shocking us. Like, hey, if you're not going to leave your wife, your mother, your father, your children, then you can't follow me. Hey, wake up. See what's here. See what I'm calling you to do. So let's imagine that Jesus said this statement of verse 26 to get our attention. Then he leads us into verses 28 through 31. So in 28, we see in the gospel, it's written, for which of you intending to build a tower does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he
Sorry,
has enough
Beth, excuse
complete
me,
it.
but
Yes.
all we see is the sunshine.
Oh
We
my,
can't see your face at
wow.
all.
Oh,
There
okay.
you are. There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
No problem. I think the sun's shifting. So thank you, Cindy. So in verse 28, we hear of building this tower, and we would sit down and estimate the cost to see whether we have enough to complete it. Otherwise, we would lay a foundation and not be able to finish it. And then people would ridicule us for it. And then we can see in verse 31, it's written, or what king going out to wage war against another king will not sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him at 20,000. All of these verses, 28 through 31, are examples of people like counting the cost, creating a structure. So if I sit down and create the structure, will I be able to accomplish what I want to accomplish, which is counting the cost? What would it cost for us to build something, create a foundation? What would we need to lay down to wage war? How would we create a strategy? And then that ties into
We still have a connection to Aspen, but Aspen is frozen for the moment. Winter is coming.
hello, everyone. Sorry about that.
Hello, yes.
Hello, I'm back. So all this to say, I think you get the point that we can spend so much time counting the costs that we talk ourselves out of what Jesus.
It grieves me to report that you're frozen up again.
Welcome to the Roll with the Flow Church.
Well, I keep just bouncing in and out, don't I? So let me wrap this up quickly. Thank you so much for your patience. What if we quit counting the costs and we took a leap of faith and we jumped into something that Jesus was calling us to do? What would it be like to lead a Bible study or covenant group? What would it be like to start a nonprofit? What would it be like to set a big, hairy, audacious goal to get the basement of our church up to code? Jesus is telling us, go for it. There's nothing wrong with the plan. And don't get bogged down in the minutia or get caught up in analysis paralysis. Jesus is teaching us, count the costs and let me lead you. I will not abandon you. Jesus is saying to us, I will not forsake you. Let me stun you into leading the life that God is calling you to do. Trust me. Trust your gut to know I'm calling you to create the kingdom with me. It's not a fluke. Trust me, I've got you. Jesus is saying, follow me. Trust your instincts. Trust your gut. I will not forsake you. Amen.